right, welcome back. We're still talking about complex societies in these segments, and we're moving on to one of your readings, one of the authors that you're expected to go over, Howard Zinn. And if you remember, Howard Zinn had a lot to say about specifically Christopher Columbus in the reading you looked over. So what was Howard Zinn all about? You know, it's obvious he's a historian, but what's his thing? What makes him special? Now, if you look at how history is traditionally told, it's a lot different than what you see from Howard Zinn. And I pulled up this thing, winners. It's often been said that history is written by the winners. And you think of it, what happens? A society will move or come in conflict with another society. There's a winner. Who writes the history? Definitely the people that did the conquering. So often you can say to yourself, how accurate is the story we're getting? Where's the story coming from? Is it complete? Or are we missing something because the losers didn't get their chance to say what was going on? And that's really what Howard Zinn is all about, because you can kind of think of it in a way that he writes from the perspective of the loser, whatever that means, the people that really weren't able to have their say when we read history. And related to the idea of winners writing history, Henry Kissinger once said that history is the memory of states. And then you think about that, which states? Who chooses that? Who's writing that? And that becomes kind of complicated, and you can sure come up with some arguments of why we might need what Howard Zinn is doing. Christopher Columbus was a big theme in his reading that you went over. And just a quick review of that. We're going to talk about this in the discussion boards. When I grew up, we'd sing in kindergarten, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and all this wonderful stuff. And he really shows another side to Christopher Columbus and the discovery of America. And for a long time, that wasn't really told. Increasingly, you hear more and more of that. And it was interesting, too, because he took Columbus's own words and often the Spanish explorers that were working with him. So he took their words. And he also talks about the idea of that it's important to bring in these other perspectives in a different way. He talks about overlooking versus belittling, and he attacks one of his fellow historians who says things like, well, yes, Christopher Columbus may have carried out genocide, but he was a great sailor and explorer. And he says that it's bad enough when you overlook things, bad things that happen from the perspectives of the losers, but it's even worse if you try to make it small. So he really attacks that and says, you've got to tell the other story. Okay. So we're gonna really think about how Howard Zinn's perspectives and looking at history from another perspective. I want you to think about how that is related to the concept of ecological footprint that we talked about earlier in the course. That's kind of a neat question to ask. All right, so when we come back in the next segment, we're going to talk about ecological imperialism, the writings of Crosby, because they fit in well with Guns, Germs, and Steel, and also with the writings of Howard Zinn. So I'll see you next time.